M13 F3AM, the good old Hummel, or the Su-8. Kicking it off with the gun, you can see right away that this baby works completely differently from everybody else, as it relies on its rate of fire and accuracy, opposed to the competition that puts the weight on penetration and alpha damage. Still, the FV304 has the best DPM potential of the bunch. Notice, however, that I mentioned potential. While with most artillery the brake on their damage dealing potential is their long reload and general inaccuracy, with Bird, your largest limiting factor will be actually your average penetration of only 57 mm and very low alpha damage of only 450 per shot. Combine these two very low values, and you will only do a couple of points of damage if you manage to hit a heavily armored surface on the enemy. Further limiting factors are the extremely low shell velocity, that both makes hitting moving targets rather tricky and also gives more chance to the enemy to move after you fired, and the greatly reduced firing range. Now unfortunately these statistics were for some reason unavailable on Tanks GG, but basically, just as with the Bishop at Tier 5, you can only cover about half of the map at best on larger maps, while everyone else can just sit back in the furthest corner away and reach the other side of the map easily if they wish. Now this is the reason why so many people don't find the FV304 to be enjoyable as an artillery. You have to keep up with the battle, and if you don't choose your targets well or can't hit their weak spots, you will only do laughable amounts of damage. That said, those who master this beast can be very efficient in it thanks to the fantastic accuracy of 0.67, the lightning quick reload of only 4.6 seconds, or the superb reload with 13 seconds, which is over twice as fast than what most of your opposition has. With this rate of fire, you can often keep people pinned in place while constantly damaging their tracks, and the limited firing range is because you actually act more as a mobile mortar than a long-range artillery piece. Now this of course also means that your shell trajectory is awesome, enabling you to hit in places, most notoriously behind cover as well, where other artillery simply couldn't. Your gun arc is a little restrictive, with 14 degrees to the left and 17 to the right, but the overall 31 degrees overall gun arc is absolutely workable. Moving on to the protection, surprisingly enough you are actually not the most weakly armored SPG out at Tier 6, and are actually more on par with the rest, having 25 mm of armor all around. Now of course this also means that basically everybody has paper for armor, which is really business as usual for artillery. As it's really no use, we won't have a look at the actual armor profile this time around either. The same average values go for your health as well. 200 HP is really in line with what the competition has. Be careful though, as you will be a lot more in the middle of the action than the others will be, so you will go down in a maximum of 2 shots from a lot of your opposition. Next up, it's the mobility, and this is where the FV304 really shines. Well, mostly. The top speed of 72 km per hour makes even some light tanks feel sorry for themselves, and the terrain resistances are not too bad either, even if they are not exactly light tank-like. The power to weight ratio with 24.5 horsepower per ton is the best of the bunch as well, and once again, it will make some light tank drivers cry. Where this machine sucks out a little is the hull traverse though. With only 22 degrees per second, you will really turn slowly, so you can forget about quick maneuvers. Reverse speed is really bad as well, which is generally true for most artillery, so if you get yourself into trouble, going forward is almost always going to be the better choice than reversing out of the situation. And as for the rest, your camo rating is actually fantastic, and your view range with 310 meters is quite alright as well. So, how do you play the FV304 then? Well, first is first, get into a position behind a larger choke point, preferably behind dips or walls, because you can shoot over them while remaining in cover yourself. Keep on working over the enemy and risk a few blind shots here and there into typical camping positions. And of course, don't forget to run away if the front is about to collapse. Second half of the battle, however, keep your eyes open for opportunities for jumping on low health enemies, light tanks or enemy artillery. That's right, this time around it's artillery who hunts the light tanks. Keep in mind though that you can't really turn sharply, so you will have to apply hit and run tactics. Zoom in with great speed, if you can zoom downhill, even better. Only fire when you almost bump into the enemy, and zoom past their hopefully burning wreck without slowing down for a second. Playing Bert as an assault gun is the most fun you can have in an artillery, and if you don't do this in the later stages of the battle, you are missing out on both damage and fun at the same time. Against larger and slower heavy tanks, you can even get into close quarters knife fights. You will be able to still outmaneuver them. Try shooting their weakly armored parts though. There is nothing more frustrating than zooming in and then doing 12 glorious damage. Equipment-wise, I use the gun rammer, vents and the gun laying drive, though if you really want to focus on the second half of the game, I could very well see coated optics as well for the third slot. As for crew skills, I would personally go for Brothers in Arms first, followed by clutch braking, Sixth Sense and probably camo. Alright, I think it's time to put down the statistics and get into a real fight, Bert style. Alright, so here we are in Bert the Avenger, aka the infamous FV304. Now this time around we got ourselves into a tier 8 battle on airfield. However, it's not as bad as it sounds. Bert will definitely have problems hitting the, well, more heavily armored surfaces on the enemy heavies when it's facing tier 7s and especially tier 8s. However, this time around there is actually only one Chinese 112 on the enemy team. And all the rest are mostly mediums and tank destroyers with the occasional light tank, so it's not as bad of an opposition as it might have seemed at first glance. So, we position ourselves right about here, which should give us the possibility to remain hidden when firing, while also being able to reach the usual choke point up here on the left, and we should be able to cover the middle as well quite nicely. Have a look at though that limited firing range. Pretty much every other artillery would be able to cover the entire map, shooting right from the edge of the map itself. We can't even reach the enemy cap zone. But what do we have here? That's actually the 112, the enemy team, and he stops there, and oh boy, that was actually a penetrating hit. Now you see the 112 is right on the edge of my firing range, and look at how much did I have to hit, and whoa, 460, that's another penetrating hit. So shooting him right there, at the edge of my firing range, will basically allow for those shells to come almost vertically down into its engine deck. There we did see what the difference is, and that was a really bad shot by the way, from hitting the engine deck and hitting the front of the 112. The third shot did 2 whole damage. Yep. That's the difference between doing a lot of damage and basically no damage at all in the FV304. Now shooting the TVP should be fine though, but still the TVP is not exactly the most heavily armored tank out there. That tier 8 medium did only receive 161 damage though from our shot, which means that the shot did not penetrate at its front. Yep. That's the FV304 in a nutshell for you, and you will see me that actually most of the shots that I take at the enemy tier 7 and tier 8 mediums will not go through. Yep, there we go again, 183 damage. Not exactly great, is it? But with our rate of fire we can keep hammering them and hopefully also pin them in place. Now I really should go here for the T-37. Doing the maximum amount of damage in the FV304 is a skill that you really have to be more concerned about than with any other artillery out there. Instead of doing small amounts of damage to these guys, which is, well, it's not useless, but I could have one-shotted that T-37 easily by now. See how accurate that 0.67 meters dispersion is, by the way. This is something that you can only dream of in other artillery pieces. And whenever I don't mess up my shots, those are pretty much guaranteed to hit right on target. Also, the reload is absolutely fantastic. Now I'm using a gun rammer here, The crew is not too great though, so this could still be very much bumped into an even more aggressive setup with brothers in arms, and that was a really bad shot. I fully expected him to zoom down there. And I'm not even using any premium consumables here. Something that I did not mention, by the way, in the review, as we casually take out that AMX1357, is that the FV304 only gets HE ammunition. It doesn't have any gold ammo, it doesn't have an AP shell option. Basically has the same gun than what the Bishop has a tier lower. No more room for cheekiness. This machine is cheeky in itself as it is. Now this was a rather casual, almost 1800 damage by us, but the game is surprisingly still very close. So we have to keep on the pressure, otherwise this could go pear-shaped really easily. I'm pretty certain that the gorilla is reloading here, and that guy doesn't have an awfully long reload, so hopefully we can help out the AMX ELC. We managed to smack the gorilla, tracking him, and that allowed our teammates to take him out easily. You see, this is the first and probably only time that I had to adjust my aim a little bit. And that's a good hit in the Jagdpanther too, also penetrating him from up top. So that 31 degrees of gun arc will be enough in most of the times. Now in the meantime the T-37 did manage to slip through and take out our own artillery, unfortunately. This, however, here is a good chance to go after either the GW Panther, who is right up there, or the A44 as well, who, if I'm not mistaken, is on very low health, and there he is. Unfortunately, the GW really knows what he's doing, and he was unavailable for a shot now. I could go after him here. However, the A44 is about to come around, and instead I will be setting up a nice little ambush here. Hello and goodbye. By the way, there is a replay bug in this replay. The T-37 on the enemy team did actually go and is now capping us, as the guy will tell us about in chat as well in a second.